We often stress that you should share what you've learned on this show with your family and friends. You've heard us say that you can make a big difference, possibly even save someone's life. So I want you to pay special attention to Dr. LaMarche's story because it could be your loved one, neighbor, maybe even someone you just met. The thing that I'm stressing is the importance of opening people's minds to the function of their nervous system and its relation to health. And with that, I'm honored to introduce Dr. Gilles LaMarche. Dr. LaMarche?
If you were a plumber and I walked into your home and you had a bunch of leaky faucets, you'd probably be a little bit embarrassed, wouldn't you? Well, as a chiropractor for 33 years now, I'm probably a little bit embarrassed about sharing this story with you, but I share it because I know that when you hear the story, this could save a life or could save a lot of lives. I've been a regular chiropractic patient since I'm 12, and in 2003, I developed this difficulty breathing. It got so bad to the point that one day, one of my assistants said to me, "Dr. LaMarche, I'm so afraid you're going to die in front of me." And I looked at her and said, "Oh, what are you talking about?" She said, "Listen to you. Your breathing sounds terrible. You're ashen gray. You just haven't looked well for a long time." And I said to Micheline, "You know, I think I'm allergic to something. I get this feeling in my chest because I am allergic to cat hair." So I was getting a very similar feeling in my chest. Well, anyway, that day she decided that no, she wasn't going to take that for an answer. And she got on the telephone and called my best buddy, Barry, who happens to be a medical doctor, who I had never seen as a physician. We just hung out together all the time and played tennis and just really, really good friends. And so she called Barry, and I wasn't aware of that, but that night Barry calls the house and he says to me, "Gilles, if I had made a promise to someone and you were the only one who could help me fulfill my promise, would you do whatever it takes to help me?" I said, "Of course I would. That's what friends do for each other." He says, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow in my office at 4 o'clock, and he hung up. He knew I didn't see patients on Tuesday afternoon, and I thought, oh, that Micheline, she must have called him. And so I went over to Barry's office, and after a series of different tests, I was diagnosed with a terminal condition called primary pulmonary hypertension. It's not high blood pressure. It's increased pressure from the lungs pushing into the heart, not allowing the heart to fully pump blood into the lungs to have the blood fully oxygenated. I went through a number of tests, went through a number of specialists, and the best thing that was offered to me from a medical perspective was a double lung and heart transplant. Yes, you heard it right. What I was told that I needed to stay alive was a double lung and heart transplant. I did a lot of research. I found that the majority of transplant recipients, don't lead a high quality of life. And I always led a vibrant life. I mean, I like to jump out of planes, I drive fast cars, fast snowmobiles, and I thought if I was to have a transplant and I survived, I would be on medications for the rest of my life. I could potentially end up carrying an oxygen tank with me for the rest of my life. And I mean, I was still young. I mean, 2003, I was 48 years old. And I thought there's no way that I'm going to do that. And after having a discussion with my family, I decided that I would allow my body to transition. I'd had a beautiful life, and I thought if this is God's plan, this is what's going to happen. And I went from bad to worse to worse to worse. And I finally left my office in April of 2004, getting ready to die. It's a difficult feeling at the age of 49 to start planning your funeral when you've been healthy all your life. And I was still under regular chiropractic care. However, what I will tell you later was the type of care that I was receiving. So I went home and started planning this funeral. I was sleeping a lot. I was tired all the time. I had help at home, couldn't do much anything on my own. I couldn't even make dinner for myself. One morning, about a month after, I think it was on the 14th or the 15th of May, 2004, I woke up and it's as if I was getting like thousands of messages through my brain all at once. The first one was, "Gilles, you're an idiot. You've been preaching the chiropractic paradigm of how the body heals, for 25 years. There's got to be something seriously wrong with your spine." And then the next thought was, "Oh yeah, but you know what? You get adjusted every week." And then the next thought, "Yeah, but never by the same person." So what I recognized that morning is that I would get adjusted by some of my buddies. If we had lunch together, we'd go to his office or he'd come to my office, and then next week it might be with somebody else, or 2 weeks later it was with someone else. But there was not one chiropractor in my community that actually had a patient chart on me. I had not had a thorough spinal or nervous system exam in probably 15 to 20 years. And though I always thought that I was under regular chiropractic care, I recognized that day in the moment that every single one of my patients was receiving better care than I was receiving. And it was nobody's fault but my own. And so I reached over, still in bed, I reached over, grabbed the telephone, called my former office. 2 chiropractors had taken over my office, spoke to my former chiropractic assistant, and I said, Janet, I want an appointment as a new patient. And she started to laugh. She said, oh, Doc, you've been under care for like all your life almost. I said, I know, but I want a true great evaluation from head to toe. I want everything checked properly. And what we discovered is that my spine looked quite decent, except for one section. From the 7th cervical, which is the last bone at the bottom of your neck, to the 4th thoracic, so 4 more bones below, that entire area, which we refer to as the cervical-thoracic junction, was a complete mess. Now, I will tell you, I had no pain in my neck, I had no pain in my back, but I was dying a very, very slow death. I couldn't go up a flight of stairs by myself. I couldn't walk 100 feet unaided. And so that day, we had a discussion, the 2 chiropractors and myself, and I said, I want to get adjusted every day. And their thought at the beginning was, well, for how long? And I looked at it and said, until I die, until I thrive, I don't have a lot of options anymore, because the only thing that had been offered to me before was a double lung and heart transplant. I started getting adjusted 6 days a week for the first few weeks. And by the end of August, so you're talking May 15th, by the end of August, back to the cardiologist to find out that my pulmonary pressure, the measurement of pressure that had been 57 was now 27. Like a 50% improvement in 3 months. And the cardiologist says, Jill, this is impossible. We must have made an error in our diagnosis. The reality is that he didn't understand what chiropractors did, and we obviously had that discussion. What I'm really happy to tell you is that I've gone on to fully recover. At that time, my heart was 2.5 times the size of normal. 3 years ago, I had a complete checkup again. My heart has actually been restored to its normal size. Because when we talk about the fact that the power that made the body heals the body, provided there's no interference, what we know is that the body will compensate. So what happened that when my heart couldn't pump strong enough to push blood into my lungs, my heart started expanding. The heart muscle got bigger and bigger and bigger until it could no longer expand. There was no more room in my chest cavity for my heart to get any bigger. And when the nervous system correction occurred, then there was no longer a need for my heart to pump that hard, because there was no reflux of pressure from my lungs into my heart, that my heart just went back to normal. It was an interesting conversation, because that examination took place at the Cooper Institute in Dallas, and the conversation between I and my now then cardiologist at the time was, how did this happen? And so there I was in a position as a chiropractor who had finally, after all these years, become a true chiropractic patient, able to discuss with the cardiologist exactly the transition that I've gone through. I'd gone from someone who was extremely ill, who had severe, what we call subluxations in the upper thoracic area, which happens to be the area where the nerves exit the cord to feed what parts of the body, do you think? The heart and the lungs. And the minute that those nerve roots started being able to flow freely, that the electricity from the brain down the cord could actually go to my heart and my lungs started working normally, and I fully recovered, to the point where last year and the year before, I actually ran the anchor leg of the White Rock Marathon in Dallas. I share that story because if you know anyone who's had any type of cardiac or pulmonary issues and they have not been checked by a chiropractor, I'm not telling you that they may heal through chiropractic care. What I'm telling you is that if they have not been checked by a chiropractor, make it a necessity to share this message with them and have them checked by a chiropractor to see whether or not they have subluxations that are interfering with the normal nervous system transmission to any part of their body, and in this case, heart and lungs. So happy to share a true story, what many again would call a miraculous recovery, and what I tell you is the body's ability to heal itself when it's interference-free.